Shabbat Smart hot water controller for the USA. A system with a hot water tank, immersion heaters, so here we can see the tank with two immersion heaters, top immersion heater and bottom immersion heater. And during the weekday, the way the operation works is that the 240 volt comes down over here through a thermostat and activates the immersion heater. When the temperature is reached on the immersion heater, the connection moves from number 2 to number 4, and then it goes down to heat the bottom heating element until the temperature is reached, and then it disconnects from number 2 and then it goes to standby. This is weekday operation. We can see in the tank over here we have cold water inlet and hot water outlet. We add between the cold water inlet and the hot water outlet a mixing pump. We also add a non-return valve here on the line, and the non-return valve is to avoid when we mix the water from the hot into the cold in order to mix the tank. We also want to make sure that when the pump is not operating, cold water does not bypass, and therefore there's a non-return valve that needs to be installed on this line right over here. Then we have off the hot water outlet, we also have a pipe that goes out through a motorized valve into the drain, and this is to allow us on Friday when we need to cool down the tank, we can release some water down to the drain. Before the motorized valve, we put a gate valve in order to balance the flow to the drain so it doesn't overflow in the drain. So this is the water side. Now let's have a look at the electrical connections. So on the Shabbat Smart controller, we will start from the very left. We have a relief valve, so we can see the live coming down over here, the neutral coming from here. So if we look at the original connection, the original power supply, we can see L1 live going into the board and neutral going into the board. The neutral is bridged directly to the other side, and here you have all the neutrals are basically connected daisy chained together. The live goes through a fuse, a 10 amp fuse to protect the board, and then it comes out, as we can see over here, it comes out on this side, and it goes to the common on different relays that we want to use them. So we're going to look on the relief valve. We will see the live coming in the common and then going out on the normally open. Obviously into the same cable we have the neutral coming in. The ground we're not showing, but everything needs to be grounded. And then it goes down to the valve to open the valve. Next relay, the mixing pump. So we can see the same live permanent comes in on the common and then leaves on the normally open, and together with the neutral goes down to the mixing pump. Then we have the Shabbat demand. So when the controller calls for the heating on Shabbat, for the immersion heater to operate, live that comes in on the common goes out from the normally open, together with the neutral, it goes into the cable. And as we can see over here, we will enlarge it a bit, and we can see over here that it goes into A1 and the neutral into A2 to activate this 25 amp contactor. The contactor receives 240 volt on L1 and L2 from the mains, and when it activates on Shabbat, when we have the demand in A1 and A2, the coil is activated. We see the energy, the power is going to go down T1, T2, and it will go to the bottom heating element. It will go only to the bottom heating element, as the thermostat on the top is too hot for Yad Soledes Boy, and therefore we're using our thermostats, which are a tank sensor and a pipe sensor right over here. So we'll enlarge it a bit. We have a tank sensor over here and a pump sensor over here, pipe sensor. which you can watch the general installation video, which will show how to install the sensors. So we heat the tank with a lower heating element and we stop it below Yad Soledes Boy. Obviously before Shabbat we drop the temperature in the water to below Yad Soledes Boy. So this was a Shabbat demand. Now we're going to look at the weekday. So we have a mode switch, a mode relay. On Shabbos it's activated. The connection over here is common in the middle, normally open on the left, normally closed on the right. Which means that in weekday mode, when the relay is not active, this connection is normally closed. And therefore now we can see how it operates. So we take live, we take it into a weekday timer, and a neutral into the weekday timer. Then we have a switched live. The switched live from the weekday timer goes through our mode relay. So the mode relay goes through the common, and the weekday it's automatically connected to the other side, to the normally closed, and we can see it comes out over here and goes down with the neutral down the cable and activates a different contactor. That's the weekday contactor. This is a Shabbos contactor, this is weekday contactor. So it activates a weekday contactor, and when it activates a weekday, now it's going to go to the top heating element, as from there it's going to pass to the bottom one once the heating element at the top, the water at the top reaches the temperature. When we are in Shabbat mode, obviously the weekday will be disconnected as a switch live from the timer goes through the Shabbat mode relay, and the Shabbat mode relay will deactivate when it energizes, it disconnects the normally closed from the center connection. Then we have an optional which is used for booster set. If you have a cold water booster set and you want to disable it, so you power it in the weekday through this relay, and therefore when it goes into Shabbat mode, this is deactivated. Last one is a kitchen LED. We use a 12 volt kitchen LED we supply with a box, and the power for it is a negative, so it will come from the connector over here. Basically this is the power input for the board itself, so we supply it with a 9 volt transformer. The 9 volt transformer powers the board itself, and it's also bridged right over here. So we use this 9 volt for the kitchen LED. The negative goes directly and the positive goes through the common in the kitchen LED relay and then out the LED in the kitchen. This relay will be active when in Shabbos mode and the water temperature is below Yad Soledes Boy. So those two conditions need to apply. When the water is ready for Shabbos, that's when the kitchen LED will be illuminated. The two sensors that we discussed before, we have a tank sensor and a pipe sensor, and they are wired with a 2-core cable to the tank sensor and pipe sensor connections. Last connection over here is a mode switch, Shabbos weekday. It's a contact switch. When it's closed contact, it's on Shabbos. When it's open contact, it's on weekday mode. We have rotary switches over here which come configured from the factory, where this one sets a mixing time. When we do mixing on Friday, normally it's could be between 120 and 240 seconds for each cycle. The relief time could be between 60 and 240, and then we have pasteurization temperature. We can set by the dip switches the system to pasteurize the water on Motzei Shabbos, and this pasteurization, here we can set the temperature in centigrade of the pasteurization. Dip switches right over here. So dip switch number 1 and number 2 are serving the Yad Soledes Boy temperature target. So the default is about 45 degrees, where both switches are off, but you can set it to 43 degrees or you can set it to 40 degrees. Dip switch number 4, the last one. This one for off. If it's off, it will show on the display Celsius temperature, and if it's on, it will show Fahrenheit temperatures. Dip switch number 3, that's the dip switch, as you can see over here, to enable pasteurization. So if it's on, pasteurization is enabled, which means that after Shabbos mode, when Shabbos mode is finished, it will pasteurize the tank. If it's off after Shabbos, it will not pasteurize. So if you have a single tank which you use for weekday and Shabbos, there's no really need to pasteurize it normally. But if you have multiple tanks and you have a dedicated tank for Shabbos, you want to make sure it's pasteurized every Motzei Shabbos, so the water is in good condition. In a nutshell, this is a basic explanation for the Shabbat Smart hot water controller wiring for the US. Thank you for watching.